Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with another wargaming and miniature video. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to make some movement trays for your massed combat infantry, cavalry, whatever you have that you need to move in a block. And you can make your own movement trays on the cheap, right? And so, like, I have some box sets here, some boxes from my box sets that I've already assembled and put together and all that. And you could do it for your, like, here's ancient Greek hoplites for Hail Caesar or something. Whatever you do, whatever kind of box sets you might have, and you can convert these into movement trays. Now, you can use cereal boxes or any other kind of card stock. I recommend these. Well, you're going to throw them away anyway, so use these, or a cereal box, because that's going to be thick enough and durable enough to withstand years and years and years of use on the gaming table. Where if you use like a thinner card stock, it'll probably dissolve, warp, bend, what have you. Okay, so let me go ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera over my shoulder so that you can see me working on my cutting mat right there. And I'll explain what's going on and what tools you'll need and stuff like that. All right, so now I'm making these for my popular black powder or Hail Caesar models, which are all mounted the same. They're 40 by 40 on the infantry, and they're 50 by 50 for the cavalry. And that is the same for my Hail Caesar models, which are ancients. But you can use this for any rule set. You'll just need to make adjustments for your own game. The measurements that I'm going to use today are going to be based on those figures. Now, in the games, you have a certain number of bases that you will use traditionally, and they will be usually in specific types of formations. I will not try making a movement tray for a line formation. Okay, so if your players or if you set or yourself want to go into a line formation, don't expect to have a movement tray ready for you for that type of a formation. The most popular formation, and also for march column, you're not going to make a movement tray for a march column. So usually it's the mid formation that you're going to make a movement tray, and that's usually an attack column or a four deep line. Okay, so the British use a 4 deep line, and then like the French would use an attack column. Just figure out what your base formation is, the mid formation, and base your movement tray on that, and you'll be fine. Okay, now I pulled out two units, a cavalry unit and an infantry unit, because the base sizes are different. I'm not going to make a movement tray for my artillery. It's not really necessary because there's so few bases. I'm also not going to make a movement tray for generals because they usually move around independently. So you don't need to make trays for that. You only need to make trays for your battalions or regiments, your brigades, however your game sets them out. Now, the reason why you have a movement tray is so that when you're moving these units on the table, it makes it easier. It becomes one element, one item that you move, and not like this one has like 10 different elements, because I've got skirmisher bases which are smaller. Now, you might not magnetize your skirmisher bases. You might have them separately moving with your unit. And if you do that, it just becomes more difficult because you have to move 2, 3, 10 different bases. Where if you have a movement tray, you're just moving 1. Same thing with the cavalry. Now you might notice that I've got large units out here. The reason why I did large units is because even if I have a large unit over here for the video, I can always just take 2 bases off and I'll have a normal unit. And if I wanted to take 2 more bases off, I could have a small unit. So I could make 3 different size movement trays for 3 different units, all using the same unit here. Some of the tools you're going to need. Well, a cutting mat. The reason why you want a cutting mat is you don't want to damage the work table or whatever blanket you're using or whatever. So make sure you got a cutting mat. I today just replaced my blade. So this is going to be a brand new blade. I recommend that when working with cardstock because you want smooth cuts. You don't want any jagged cuts. Okay, you're going to need a metal straight edge. This helps when trying to cut straight lines. Duh. Okay, now I use rubber bands to hold the movement tray together when it is drying. It'll hold it together so it'll dry better. Now, there's a couple of different philosophies. There's some people that use super glue, and then there's others that use white PVA glue. I have a tendency to believe that the white PVA is actually a stronger bond when it comes to cardstock. If it's metal or plastic, then the super glue would be better. But if it's wood or porous material like cardstock, then I would use a PVA. Now I'm going to use tacky to make it stick together quicker for the video. But normally I might use just regular Elmer's glue. But we're going to use some tacky today. Now I'm going to lay it on its side so that the tacky will gradually start moving towards the front. I want like a downward move so that the glue will slowly start moving towards the front. All right, and you'll need cardstock, obviously. Now we're not going to use these thin side pieces or the ends. We're only using the large front and back pieces or plates or whatever. So you can use any kind of cutting. I could probably use my X-Acto, but I could probably even just peel it apart at where it was glued together, but I decided just to cut it. All right, so now we got something to work with. We don't need to see these pictures, not important. Okay, this is a lot better. Yeah, I could do it just by measuring it just to make sure it's the right size, but what I want to do is visualize a little bit better. So I'm going to put my models onto the cardstock in the formation shape that I was talking to you about. When you make the movement tray, you're not just making the bottom, you're also making the sides. So what you're going to need is about a 2 millimeter, maybe 3 millimeter buffer around the models. And that's something that you can eyeball or whatever. Something like that. Now let me take a look at that, and we're looking at, well, shoot, that's 5 millimeters. That's too much. Let's get a little bit closer. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to draw the outer perimeter of these models. Okay, so I've got the outer perimeter. Now I know this is how big the bases are. Okay, that's going to help me when I go to bend the edges. So I'll know where to bend the edges. Okay, so let me get these models out of the way. Now I'm going to cut, but I'm not going to cut on that line, right? Because we're going to have to fold the edges up. I'm going to cut a little bit larger than about this much, maybe a little bit more around the edge. Okay, and then I'm going to cut all 4 sides. Well, 3 sides, because the other side is right along the edge here. But if it wasn't, I would have cut all 4 sides. It's a little awkward because I'm avoiding the camera. So that you can see what I was doing. We take this sure it's cut all the way through. There we go. Now the reason why I did it this way is because I'm going to be able to do a second one right there. So I could do multiples. Alright, so now we know that this unit here will fit inside that box right there. So now what we need to do is trim just outside this line, because when you fold it, you will tend to lose about as much paper as the thickness of the cardstock. So you got to make sure you give the thickness of the cardstock an opportunity to bend. So what we do is, instead of cutting it directly on that line, we got to give it a little extra. Just a little extra. And then what I'm going to cut is ever so slightly. I'm only scoring it. I'm not cutting all the way through. Just use the weight of the blade to go across. I'm going to do that again. Again, we got to give it a little extra space. Score. Not all the way through. Also a little extra space. Score, but not all the way through. Score, but not all the way through. All right. All right, so now we've got all 4 sides scored. Now the corners are the tricky part. That's the one you got to think about. I usually glue the sides onto the ends. So what I do is I take from where it was scored to the outside and cut all the way through. That's where the 2 scores cross. So it's cut, and the same thing here. it's there. And then I do the same thing back here. Okay, so what happens is those little extra pieces that stick out are going to be tabs. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so because they're scored on this side, this is the side that it folds away from. So we fold it up on this side. Okay, so now in this case, I'm going to use 2 rulers. And I'm going to lay this along the ruler, the straight edge, where the fold is. And then I'm going to push it down. So we get kind of a straight fold. Now, take it slowly. It doesn't have to be all done in one fold. You want it to be done right. Now, after you get it started, you really don't need the double ruler anymore. Okay, so you got this edge going up from where the score is. Okay, I'm going to do it again. Whoops. And you get a little bit of a fold over here as well. Okay. Now you want that fold to be 90 degrees, but not yet. We're going to fold this end, 2 end pieces. And you can see the tab starting to stick out right there. Okay, so we got all 4 of the sides folded. Now I need to just make sure that they go up a little bit more. I'm exaggerating, more than 90 degrees. You can kind of see how I'm folding it up. So it's basically being folded up. I'm exaggerating the fold. Now one of the reasons why we fold is those sides give the base stability where it won't want to warp, bend, or contort in any different direction. Plus, it keeps your models in the tray. Okay, so we fold that all the way up, and we fold this all the way up. There we go. So now I've come to understand that these tabs, in the past, I would glue them on the outside. I've decided I don't like that look. I'm going to fold those tabs underneath to the inside. Okay, so those tabs go to the inside of my ends. Okay, so far so good, right? All right, as you know, white glue can squirt out and become messy, so I use wax paper. I don't need a whole lot of it. There we go, and I can use this over and over and over, 100 times over. Okay, and that's going to keep any of the glue that seeps out or squishes out. If it hits this, it won't stick to it. Okay, so we get this tacky glue, and we do what we do. Actually, let's get all the tabs ready for gluing. That way I can do them all at one time. And all we need is just a little bit on the corners. And then what we do is we straighten these sides up so that they have a chance to stick together vertically. Okay, so far so good. Okay. Okay. And then what I do is I take, like I said, I take one of these large rubber bands and I'm going to put that over the edges to hold all sides together. You've got to be careful not to pop anything or to let it go too fast or what have you. Okay, it's a little tricky to get that to happen. Now the rubber bands, because of the pressure, is going to start to try to fold your tray upwards. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually put the unit in the tray to give it weight. Keeping it down flat. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry for about maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I'll be right back. Okay, while we were waiting for this one to dry, I went ahead and created a second one for my cavalry. Okay, so this is the British in 4-rank line. Right, and you would move them around just like this, right? So you would just have one piece to move on the battlefield, and also you'll notice that I put my skirmishers without their magnets in there as well, all 4 of them, right? And so it still moves as one unit. Now you could do something like that. And I might have made this one just a hair too large, but that's okay, because not every base you do, when you flock it, you might have a little extra gravel or they might not fit together exactly right. So it's always good to have just a little bit extra wiggle room in there. This might be just a little bit too much. I probably should have dropped that down by a millimeter or 2, but that's okay. So this unit will move around. This cavalry unit can move around as one solid unit. Now, something I don't like is that you can see the box art or something like that. And also, when you're looking at the side, you see cardboard. So I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these outside real quick. I'm going to spray paint them, and then I'm going to bring them back in and show you what they look like spray painted. Alright, so I went ahead and sprayed them with a deep forest green camouflage. It's basically an earth tone. You can use tans, browns, black, gray might work, but I think more of the earth tones look better. And I sprayed the entire inside tray, even though that's going to be covered mostly by figures, but you never know. And then the edges as well, okay? Because that's what you're going to see when you've got your figures in there. Now, what I've noticed that some people do is they'll paint or label one of these sides different colors or with words, so that when you have a unit in there, you can read on the side what unit it is. But that limits your movement tray to only being used for that one unit. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you what it looks like. Here, let's do this. Okay, they're in their trays. Now they're on the table, right? And you're just moving your units. You know, you measure and you move. You ever have any problems wheeling? You don't have it because these guys are all together and you can wheel, you know, without any effort. If you need to move sideways, you know, backwards, however you want to move them. And then I got these guys in attack column, so you know, you're only moving one element. It just makes it so much easier to move the troops that way. Thank you for coming out and watching this easy tutorial on how to make movement trays. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Wargaming in Miniature, here on YouTube. We look forward to seeing you back, and I'll catch you next time.